So I recently pulled up Gmail on my iPhone and I noticed some updates to the UI. So I wanted to talk about a few of the changes from a sort of design and engineering perspective. There aren't necessarily any huge surprises. Back in 2021, Material Design 3 was announced, and there was reporting that Google would start to move away from using material design components only to using some native iOS components. So when we look at the before on the left and after on the right, I think we're just starting to see this sort of realization of some of these changes. This inbox screen is kind of framed by three main components: search, floating action button, and bottom navigation bar. These have each been updated from Material 2 to Material 3. If we tap Compose at the bottom, we see this sheet slide up. This used to be presented in a full screen sheet, but it's now presented in this kind of card stack called a page sheet, where the underlying surface sort of scales down as the sheet slides up. I think this pattern is pretty recognizable as something that very much feels native to iOS. If we close out of this and open the email detail view, at first glance, this screen looks mostly the same. What we can see is that the icons in the top bar have changed a little bit. They used to be lighter, smaller, and had this uncontained three-dot icon. The new icon is contained in a circle. This style is pretty common among other iOS native apps like Notes and Files. If we scroll down here, as content moves underneath the top bar, we see that container appear. Based on this new container style that I'm seeing, I'm guessing that they're now using the native navigation bar component. One thing that hints at this is the particular height of the nav bar, as well as the fact that it's using a one physical pixel border, where it used to have a drop shadow. If we scroll a little bit further, we can start to clearly see that the old one used a translucent fill, while the new one uses a solid light blue fill. And lastly, when you press this three-dot button in the top right of the screen, a set of actions shows up, and it used to be presented in a custom bottom sheet. It's now presented in a native menu. Again, we're seeing a system pattern that's sort of been around for a few years now, but one that's increasingly contributing to this sense that an app feels native. So to recap a bit here, all three of the main screens in Gmail have been updated: Inbox, Compose, and Email Details, moving from Material 2 to Material 3, moving from some older iOS patterns to newer ones, and replacing several of the key components that used to be custom with their native counterparts. Overall, I think these are some really nice updates. Gmail's blending patterns from Material and iOS, and I think this is a good example of an app that's successfully sort of harmonizing two systems. Now let's take a closer look at the behaviors of two of these particular components: the page sheet and the menu. When we open up the Compose screen, we see that both of these sheets slide up from the bottom, but the new one is presented in this page sheet, the sort of visible card. The design of this sheet implies how you can interact with it. Based on where you see it other places in the system, you assume that you should be able to swipe down anywhere to kind of fling it back where it came from. But in this case, when I try to swipe down, the sheet itself doesn't actually move. It just scrolls the content. Now, if I swipe upward, we see that native navigation bar on top, and we notice that that's not part of the sort of scroll content, which means that if I actually touch down on that top bar and start swiping down from there, we can see the sheet move downward a bit. But no matter how far I drag or how hard I flick, it's always going to snap back to its position. Now, we could probably make some assumptions about why this might be the case, but who knows if it was even intentional. In any case, it's a bit unusual to have this behavior, as you'd expect to be able to swipe it down to dismiss. Let me show another example of a similar behavior in another app. If we pull up Calendar here, this is a pretty similar view. We're creating a new thing. It's a form view with several fields, and it's all presented in this modal sheet. If I scroll down, I can see that navigation bar at the top. When I scroll back up, when I'm scrolled to the top of the sheet, I can start swiping down anywhere, and it'll actually move the sheet. So I don't have to grab that navigation bar. I can just swipe down in the middle of the screen. But Calendar, just like Gmail, isn't going to let me just immediately swipe the screen away once I've started to fill out content. It'll actually automatically snap back to position the same way. But what Calendar does that's pretty interesting is that when it snaps back, it's going to pull up this action sheet. Are you sure you want to dismiss? You can continue editing or discard. I think this is a pretty cool approach. Let's look at one more example. Apple Mail, a few years back, introduced this custom behavior on their sheet, a sort of modification on this native page sheet, where when you have it pulled up, you can actually swipe it down to dismiss without any confirmation. But then, instead of totally going away, it's actually just minimized at the bottom of the screen. This way you can temporarily browse around your emails and then come back to the sheet whenever you're ready. This is a pretty clever solution and a really good example of how different teams solved a similar problem in a different way. So let's go back to Gmail here. That's the compose screen. This page sheet is a pretty nice native presentation container. What we can see in this example is that just because it's native doesn't necessarily mean that it's plug and play. You have to consider all the different parts of the UI and how their behaviors need to work together. So let's press this X button in the top left and take a closer look at that email details page, specifically how we pull up that three-dot menu at the top right. Typically, if you think of the sort of primary way that someone should interact with this, you'd assume that you should tap the icon to show some set of actions. You read through the actions line by line, look for the one you have in mind, and then you can tap it to select it. If you want to dismiss, you can tap outside. So it's sort of this search, tap, kind of interaction. In this case, if I tap the item, it's selected. Gmail is also showing me this confirmation toast at the bottom of the screen, reiterating what just happened. But as it turns out, there's another way to interact with this kind of menu. If you long press on the trigger button, it'll open the menu. So far, so good, looks kind of the same. But if I keep my finger pressed down and in a continuous gesture, start dragging downward, it's going to highlight each item instantly. There's no fading transition as I move between them. As I cross from one item to the next, I'm going to feel this kind of haptic tap. Once I get to the bottom of the list and move across the last item, it's going to show me visibly that I've gotten through all the options by scaling down the menu. I can move back up, find the item I'm looking for, then once I've arrived on it, I can simply release to select it. Once you get the hang of this interaction pattern, it becomes a really efficient, organic way to move through the UI. This combination of visual and physical feedback, the highlights and the haptics, really helps me make sense of the list of actions that are available. It helps me more effectively scan than just tapping and searching. I can move in this sort of fluid and explorative way. What's interesting here, I find, is that this is actually far from a new behavior in this iOS menu. As it turns out, in the original Macintosh interface, 40 years ago, they had this menu bar at the very top of the screen, just like we have in Macs today. But it worked a little bit differently. If you tried to click an item, like the apple here, you'd actually just see it flicker and disappear. Clicking your mouse actually doesn't open these menus immediately. You had to click and hold, just like we were showing in the native iOS menu. And if you keep holding, dragging through the list of items, even going off of the menu and back on, once you find the item you're looking for, you then release to select it. I think it's really cool to see how this behavior has evolved all the way from the original Mac to today. This idea of continuous interaction and fluid UI has always been there, I think. The combination of visual feedback and haptics creates this really satisfying, elegant way to move through the UI with confidence. Overall, I think this Gmail update really shows how design systems evolve and blend together in interesting ways. Taking Material Design 3, combining it with iOS native patterns, creates something that still feels very much Gmail, but it's at home on iOS. It's a good example of balancing platform and brand, custom and native UI. This is a hard problem in software, and I think Gmail's done a pretty nice job here.